She was just my stepmom. Until she became my safe place, I used to think of her as nothing more than my stepmom. Just the woman who married my dad after my real mom left. We weren't close. She tried, sure, but I kept my distance. I didn't want another mother. I didn't need one. At least, that's what I told myself. Back then, everything in my life felt like a constant storm. My dad was barely around, school was a mess, and I felt like no one truly saw me. Not really. I was just there. But then, something changed. It started with the little things. Like how she'd always leave the hallway light on for me when I stayed up late. Or how she remembered that I hated mushrooms and would quietly pick them out of my dinner without saying a word. I didn't notice it right away, but she was always there, present, patient, waiting. And one night, when everything fell apart, and I had no one else to turn to, she was the one who stayed. She didn't ask questions. She didn't try to fix me. She just sat there, holding space for me in a way I didn't know I needed. That moment changed everything. But it wasn't all smooth after that. My relationship with her, our relationship, grew in a way I never expected. And just when I thought things were finally getting better, life threw something at us that neither of us saw coming. It tested everything we'd built, and made me question whether I could ever truly trust again. This is the story of how the woman I once kept at arm's length became my safe place. But before I tell you how we got there, you need to know what nearly tore us apart. Because what happened next? It changed us forever. Growing up, home never really felt like home. My dad worked long hours, sometimes days would pass before I saw him. When I did, he was too tired to talk, let alone notice that I was struggling. After my mom left, it was like the house just turned quiet, cold, even. Then came Lisa, my stepmom. She walked into our lives with a warm smile and way too much optimism. I was 13, bitter, and convinced she was just another adult who'd eventually give up on me. She tried, I'll give her that. She'd ask about my day, offer to help with homework, try to cook things she thought I liked. But I kept shutting her out. It wasn't personal, I just didn't trust easily. I was used to people leaving. And even though she never said it, I could tell she felt the distance. Still, she never pushed too hard. She just stayed. It was a few months after she moved in when I noticed something wasn't quite right. She'd get phone calls late at night, always stepping out of the room to answer them. Her face would change afterward, like she was holding something in. I overheard one once. A man's voice, low and urgent. She looked scared. When I asked her about it, she just smiled and said it was family stuff. But it didn't feel right. Around that time, my dad started acting strange too. He was more tense, snapping at little things, and avoiding eye contact when Lisa was around. I started wondering if something was going on between them, something they weren't telling me. One night, I heard them arguing behind closed doors. It wasn't loud, but it was intense. I couldn't make out the words, but I felt it in my chest. Something was wrong. And then, one morning, Lisa had a bruise under her eye. She covered it with makeup, pretended nothing happened. But I saw it. I didn't know what to say. I didn't even know if I should say anything. That was the first time I started feeling protective of her, like maybe she wasn't just the outsider in our house. Maybe we both were. Maybe we were both just trying to survive in a place that was supposed to feel safe. I wanted to ask her what was going on. I almost did. But before I could, something happened that changed everything. Something I never expected. It happened on a Thursday. I remember because it was the only day of the week my dad came home early. I was in my room, half listening to music, when I heard a crash downstairs. Not just something falling, glass breaking. Then silence. That heavy kind of silence where you just know something's off. I crept out of my room and peeked down the stairs. Lisa was standing by the dining table, her hands shaking, and a broken vase lay in pieces on the floor. My dad stood across from her, fists clenched at his sides, breathing hard like he'd just run a mile. Neither of them noticed me. I wanted to step in, but I froze. And then I heard Lisa say something I'll never forget. "This isn't just about us anymore. He's watching." My dad didn't respond. He just walked out. That was it. No yelling, no explanation, just gone. After that day, everything got weird. Lisa barely spoke, and when she did, she sounded like she was walking on eggshells. My dad stayed out later and later. I tried to ask her again, what she meant by "he's watching." She told me it was complicated. "Some things are better left alone," she whispered, her eyes scanning the room like someone might be listening. That's when I started paying attention to the details. The front door lock had been changed without anyone telling me. Lisa moved her things into the guest room. She kept checking the windows at night, pulling the curtains tight even when it wasn't dark yet. And then there was the letter, folded and hidden between the pages of a book in the living room. I only found it by accident. It was addressed to Lisa, but it didn't have a return address. Just a single line written in messy handwriting, "You thought I forgot. I never forget." I didn't show her the letter right away. I didn't know how. Part of me was scared of what it meant, and another part of me was scared she already knew. I started wondering if the person she was scared of wasn't even my dad. Maybe it was someone else. Someone from her past. Someone who was still out there. And the worst part? I started to think she wasn't just protecting herself anymore. She was protecting me, too. But from what? I had no idea. After finding that letter, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the house made me jump. Every shadow looked like someone watching us. I started walking around with the letter folded in my pocket, like it gave me some kind of control, even though I didn't understand what was really going on. Lisa had become even more quiet, always glancing over her shoulder, triple-checking the locks, and barely making eye contact with me. I wanted to ask her again, to demand answers. But I could tell she was holding everything in, trying to protect me from something I couldn't see. One night, I finally snapped. We were sitting in the living room, TV on, neither of us really watching. I pulled out the letter and handed it to her without saying a word. Her face drained the second she read it. She didn't cry, didn't panic. She just sat there, completely still. And then she looked up at me and said, "I thought this was over." She didn't tell me much after that, just enough to make my stomach turn. The man who wrote that letter? He wasn't someone I'd ever met. But Lisa had known him years ago, before she met my dad. Back then, she was part of something she didn't want to talk about. She used words like mistake and dangerous, and said leaving that life came with a price. She said she thought she'd finally outrun it. But clearly, she hadn't. The next few days were a blur. Lisa barely let me out of her sight. She even started picking me up from school, which she'd never done before. My dad, meanwhile, seemed completely checked out. Whatever tension existed between them had boiled over into this strange silence, like they were both pretending the other didn't exist. I caught him staring at Lisa once, this strange mix of guilt and fear on his face. I started wondering if he knew more than he let on. Maybe he wasn't just some clueless bystander. Then the phone calls started again. Always from unknown numbers. Lisa stopped answering, but they kept coming. One night, I picked up the house phone by accident, thinking it was mine. There was a pause, and then a man's voice. Calm. Cold. Tell her I haven't forgotten. I hung up before he said anything else, but my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't even speak. That was the first time I realized we weren't just scared. We were being hunted. Someone out there had found us, or found her, and they weren't going away. Lisa tried to act strong, like she had it under control. But I could see it. The fear. The way she jumped when the doorbell rang. The way she checked the windows every night before bed. And then, one night, the back door was open. We never used the back door. Lisa was in the kitchen, and when I told her, her face went pale. She didn't speak. She just walked over, locked it slowly, and whispered, "He's here." The way Lisa said those two words, "He's here," sent chills down my spine. I stood frozen in the hallway, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. She didn't scream, didn't panic. She just reached behind the cupboard and pulled out a small black box I'd never seen before. Inside it were a burner phone, some cash, and a folded piece of paper. It was like she had planned for this moment, like she always knew it might come. That scared me more than anything. She told me to pack a small bag, quietly, no questions. I did what she said, trying to stay calm even though my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I didn't understand everything yet, but I knew enough to know we weren't safe anymore. Whoever this man was, he had found us. And Lisa wasn't going to wait around for what came next. But as we were heading toward the front door, bag in hand, something happened that neither of us saw coming. My dad was standing there. In the dark. Keys in hand, like he was about to leave. But he wasn't surprised to see us. In fact, he looked like he'd been expecting this. That's when Lisa's face changed, not to fear, but to something else. Something like betrayal. She asked him one question. "You told him, didn't you?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked at the floor and said, "I didn't think he'd come after you again. I just thought, maybe he'd leave us alone if he knew where you were." That was it. Everything we had been running from, the late night calls, the letter, the fear, all of it came down to this. My dad had been the one who gave her location away. He knew who this man was. He knew the danger. And still, he'd made a deal. I couldn't process it. The person I thought was checked out this whole time, had been playing both sides. Lisa looked like someone had knocked the air out of her. But she didn't fall apart. She took a breath, turned to me, and said, "Go to the car. Don't come back in until I say." I didn't want to leave her, but something in her voice told me not to argue. I stepped outside, heart racing, and got into the passenger seat. I watched through the window as they argued, shadows moving across the hallway. I couldn't hear what they said, but I saw the moment it happened. My dad reached for her arm, and she pushed him back, hard. Then she grabbed her phone and dialed a number. But before she could finish, the power in the house went out. Everything went black. No lights. No street lamps. Just silence. And then, the back door creaked open again. Only this time, it wasn't the wind. Sitting alone in the car with nothing but darkness around me, I held my breath. The silence felt louder than anything I'd ever heard. I wanted to run back inside, but something told me not to. Something told me it wasn't over yet. And then, just as I reached for the door handle, I saw movement. A figure stepped through the side gate, slowly, like he already knew exactly where everything was. He moved toward the house, slipping into the shadows like he belonged there. I couldn't see his face, but I didn't have to. I knew this was the man Lisa had been running from. The one who had sent the letter. The one my dad had betrayed her to. Suddenly, a loud crash came from inside. I flung open the car door and ran toward the house, my heart pounding. I didn't care what Lisa had told me, I wasn't going to let her face him alone. When I got to the door, it was open. The hallway was dark except for the faint glow of a flashlight rolling on the floor. I called her name. And then I saw her. Lisa was standing over the man. He was on the ground, groaning, clutching his arm. She was holding a fireplace poker in both hands, shaking but still standing tall. My dad was against the wall, breathing hard, his lip bleeding. It looked like chaos had exploded in that small room. Lisa looked at me, tears in her eyes. "It's over," she said. But just as she said it, the man on the floor laughed, a bitter, low sound. "You think this ends with me?" he said. "You have no idea who else is watching." That's when Lisa's face changed again, not fear, not anger. Just exhaustion. She looked at me and said, "Go get my bag. We're not staying." We left that night. The police took the man away, but Lisa didn't wait for the dust to settle. She knew this wasn't just about one person. This was bigger. She told me everything on the drive, about her past, about the people she left behind, about the life she thought she'd buried. But here's the twist no one saw coming. She didn't just marry my dad to start over. She married him because she thought he could protect her. And I think, deep down, she always knew, one day, I'd be the one protecting her. We didn't go back home after that night. Lisa drove us to a small town a few hours away, somewhere quiet where no one knew our names. She used a different last name when she checked us into a motel. It wasn't the first time she'd had to disappear, and I could tell she never really believed she'd be able to stop running. But for the first time, she wasn't alone. We weren't just stepmom and stepson anymore. We were something else, something stronger. Something real. Over the next few weeks, the tension slowly faded. The phone stopped ringing. There were no more strange letters or late-night knocks. We changed numbers, stayed off social media, and kept things low. Lisa started working part-time at a bookstore. I enrolled in a small local high school under a new name. Life wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful, and that was more than we ever expected. As for my dad, we never saw him again. He called once, left a message saying he was sorry and that he never meant for it to go that far. Lisa didn't respond. We both knew some things can't be fixed. His betrayal had cut deep. Not just because of what he did, but because of who he gave us up to. Lisa had trusted him. And I had trusted him, too. But what stayed with me most was something Lisa told me during one of those quiet nights at the motel. We were sitting outside, under a sky full of stars. She said, "I thought I was protecting you all this time, but maybe you were the reason I kept going." I didn't say much back. I didn't have to. We just sat there, side by side, finally feeling safe. Now, when people ask me about my family, I don't say, stepmom, anymore. I just say, Lisa. Because blood didn't make her my safe place. Loyalty did. Love did. And sometimes, the people who come into your life unexpectedly are the ones who end up meaning the most. She wasn't just my stepmom. She was the one who stayed.